Colleagues, welcome back to the office. It's Steve, and welcome to the CPE Today podcast. We're going to get started with our podcast presentation here just in a moment. But before we do, I'd like to share some insight on how you can receive credit for watching today's presentation. There are two options. You can either watch live as it's being recorded through Zoom. More on that here in a moment. Or you could be watching or listening on demand wherever you happen to receive content. We distribute our show through YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook, our website, and many other places. Now, if you happen to be watching on demand on your own schedule, after watching or listening to today's class, head on over to cpetoday.com and locate today's course page. You can find our course code by looking at the footer of the presentation to see the link presented there, and it will also be mentioned throughout the presentation on multiple occasions. After purchasing today's class, you'll complete a short 5-question quiz on what was discussed in today's presentation. And upon passing that, your certificate for your CPE credits will be automatically generated and available for download. In addition to your purchase, you can also download copies of today's presentation, learning materials. You can ask the presenter questions and more. Now, if you happen to be watching live as it's being recorded through Zoom, your attendance will be confirmed through attendance prompts, which will occur every 12 to 20 minutes and approximately 4 per hour. They'll pop up automatically, and when a prompt comes up, please choose a response to confirm your attendance. It doesn't actually matter what you choose as long as you choose something, as your response will confirm your engagement with our presentation. Attendance prompts might not be announced, so please keep an eye out for them. Now, as long as you've completed at least 75% of the attendance prompts, you will receive full credit for our presentation. Your completion certificate will be delivered to you by email within 2 business days of the event. You can always visit cpetoday.com if you have any questions or issues with your certificate. After our presentation today, we'd love to know what you think. There will be a course evaluation that will automatically pop up. It should take you anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes to complete, and your feedback will be used to help us produce better content in the future. Now, if you have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, we'd love to know what they are. Please use the chat or the Q&A functionality to let us know what you think, or if you have any questions on the materials that are being presented. Also, please feel free to share your experience, knowledge, and insight with the class. If you have any technical issues, you can also use that functionality to ask for help. You can always find great content at cpetoday.com. We have a variety of self-study and live courses from all topics: accounting, audit, personal development, Excel, QuickBooks, and more, you name it. Check out cpetoday.com. And the CPE Today podcast is made available Tuesdays and Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific. And you can always find great content being discussed in that podcast every single week. If you happen to be a new user, listener, viewer of the CPE Today podcast, thank you so much for coming. Welcome. We're ecstatic and happy to have you. How about you get a free credit on us? Use coupon code ONEFREEPODCAST at checkout to get a free credit for today's class. We're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation here in the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy our presentation. Right. So outside of the pricing options, what else is new inside the application that we should be familiar with? QuickBooks Desktop. Let's look at some of the things that have changed in the last couple of years that we should now be familiar with for both Desktop, Enterprise, and QuickBooks Online. And we're going to just look at stuff between 2021 and 2020. So one of the new things that they've added here is they've given you the ability to create payment reminders. What this allows you to be able to do is to trigger sending of statements to customers automatically. And this will send them an invoice, or not an invoice. Well, eventually it'll send them a copy of the invoice, but basically just say, where's the money? Go ahead and pay us. And it will automatically send these notifications out at an interval that you specify. Okay, so to set this up, come over here to QuickBooks Desktop. We're going to go ahead and choose Edit Preferences. And we're going to come over here to the Payments tab inside of our Preferences section. And we're going to go ahead and come into our Company Preferences. And this is going to be where we can go ahead and select the option that says, do you want to send payment reminders? Okay, and you'll see that option right here of payment reminders. Okay, so we can go ahead and select yes. Okay, if QuickBooks is open, prompt me at 10 a.m. And then you can say daily, weekly, or monthly. Okay, And I'll point out again, this is one of the big limitations with respect to desktop. You got to actually be in the application to actually run and interact with this. Okay. Now, after you turn on payment reminders, you can also set a customized schedule for when QuickBooks should send those reminders out to customers. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to go into our customers menu. Okay. And from our customers menu, we're going to go ahead and choose this option that says payment reminders. And this is where we're going to go ahead and select schedule payment reminders. And we can go ahead of selecting and creating a schedule. And so from here, we can either select invoices or statements. So let's say, for example, statements. We can go ahead and we can create customer groups. So let's just say defaults. It's our default customer group. This is going to be where we can go ahead and we could find a specific type of customers. So let's just say where the open balance is greater than 0. Okay. And then this is going to go ahead and pick all of our clients that have an open balance. So there's a total of 18 of them. Okay. So this is a dynamic group. So if the customer happens to have an open balance at any given time, they can fall in this group. And if they don't, they will be outside of this group. And then we could just basically say that the reminder should be, let's say, the 15th of every month. The statement period, we can go ahead and specify, should it be the current week, current month? More likely, it'll be the previous month. And then we can go ahead and tell it optionally to instead create a statement for whatever open transactions are listed. Then you can go ahead and choose like what details you want. You could choose what specific template that you'd like to be listed here. And okay. And then once this is actually set up, it will go ahead and process those reminders automatically. And we can also manually process this by coming over here to customers, payment reminders, and then review and send payment reminders. And then we would see those appropriate transactions listed here. And we could choose to send those out automatically. So kind of useful with respect to setting up those payment reminders. Now, this same type of functionality is also present in QBO. Let's go on back over here to Craig's Landscaping Design. And inside of QBO, we're going to come over here on the left-hand side of the ribbon, and we're going to go ahead and select Sales and then Customers. Okay, and this is going to show us all of our particular customers, and then it also shows the open balance. And on the right-hand side of this, you'll see the little drop-down arrow under next to Receive Payment. This is going to be where we can go ahead and we can choose to send the option of Send Reminder. And this will just go ahead and send those reminders out to those particular customers, sending them a copy of the invoice if need be. Okay, and so that's how we can go ahead and we can send a reminder directly out of this. Now, also, I'm pretty sure about this. Inside of our accounts, let me double check this. Yes. So in accounts and settings, let me go back to this. So come up here to the gear. Okay, and from the gear, we're going to go ahead and select account and settings. And from account and settings, we're going to go ahead and select sales. And then from sales, we'll scroll down here, and towards the bottom here, this is where you're going to see your reminder default options. And this is going to be where you can automatically send these on. Okay. Personally, I don't like this feature for a couple of different reasons. I have certain customers that pay on certain time periods. I have a government client. They will always pay me, but it's going to take 80 to 120 days to get paid. Intuit added this feature to QBO sometime in the last year or so, and they didn't tell anybody really about it. And they turned it on by default. And I just really annoyed me that they did that, because I started getting emails from my customers, basically saying like, hey, I'm going to pay you, but you don't need to send me a reminder. It's just being aged appropriately. And I'm pretty sure this option is on by default when you create a new company file. So if you don't want it, make sure you come on over here and you go ahead and you turn this off. Now with QBO, you can set up to 3 automatic reminders. So we can say, for example, turn on reminder 1 here, and you can say, hey, 3 days before the due date, or you can set it 3 days after the due date, or whatever frequency that you would like. Okay. And you could also customize this too. And, customize, and, it's got some placeholders here. So when it says bracket full name, it'll substitute whatever the full name of the client's is as well. Okay, so you can go ahead and set these up, and this will automatically send those reminders out for you without you really kind of having to do anything to need. Okay. Now, optionally, kind of also in the same vein with respect to QBO and QBD, you might want to send statements. In QBD and QBO, the option to create statements, there are several different types. And since we're here in QBO, we're going to come on over here, click that little same drop-down menu, and instead of selecting send reminder, we're going to choose the option that says create statement. And there are 3 types of statements. There's balance forward, open item, and transactions. Okay, so let's go ahead and choose transactions. That's my personal favorite. And what I usually look at with this is like, okay, this client has a balance of 239. I usually want them to be able to see like invoice and payment. And then at some point, usually like a payment gets skipped or an invoice gets skipped. I wanted to keep the statement date, but I wanted to adjust the start date. Okay, so I'll take the start date over here to January 1 to today. Okay, and then I'll just preview this so you can see this. And this is, I like this report because what this report shows you here is like the activity. So I invoiced you here for 205, I received 205. I invoiced you for 459, I received 220. So there's a discrepancy here. And then ultimately down here, here's the total amount billed, here's the total amount received. You know, so I'll usually send this, and you could send this or you could print this. So if you wanted to print this and send this to the client through snail mail, you could do it. Optionally, you can just go ahead and send this directly through QBO, and it'll just get sent out directly from QBO. So my preference is always to send this stuff out automatically. Okay. So something I would recommend that you check out. All right, so some other things that have been added. Actually, let's come over here to our statements. So the same statements over here that you would access this from the customers menu. And for the customers menu, you're going to go ahead and select create statements in QuickBooks Desktop. You have a lot more flexibility and a lot more options with respect to statements in desktop. But the principles are all the same, you know, balance forward, transaction list, open items. You're going to go ahead and pick whatever you want. Okay. And also from this, you can select all customers, multiple customers, one customer, you know, and in this particular case, like this is really kind of designed for printing. You know, if I were to print and actually mail this. And so this is kind of why, again, this feels a little bit more antiquated compared to its online counterpart, because again, this is intended if you were in a business and you were actually physically mailing these statements out. They've now added the option to email them out. I will point out, though, it is nowhere near as intuitive. It's going to leverage, for example, your Outlook to be able to do so because it doesn't have a perpetual connection to the internet. But you can email these out. You're definitely going to want to make sure you get your email set up correctly in order to be able to send these. Okay, some other things that have been added here in desktop. In 2021, they did improve the bank feed functionality. The 2021 release of QuickBooks gave you the opportunity to streamline incorporating these download transactions into the actual file itself, and it should allow you to integrate transactions from the bank feed into QuickBooks faster than previous. It's not as good as the online QBO, but it's much better than it used to be. So that's a nice improvement compared to prior editions. Okay, beginning with QuickBooks 2021, you can optionally now customize the payment receipt. So you can customize lots of different things inside of QBD, including the payment receipt now, where you can customize, in addition to the invoices, the POs, the statements. On the payment receipt, you can now like add your, your company's colors, your logos, and, other stuff like that. Now you're going to be able to access this from the list menu, and from the list menu, we're going to go ahead and choose templates. And this is where we're going to see all the different options with respect to the templates that we have inside the system. And so what we would want to choose here would be that payment receipt. All right, where are you? I don't think I actually have that set up on this sample file, but let me see. Yeah, here you go. So let's just say we wanted to create a new payment template. So we'd go ahead and choose payment receipt. And it's exactly what you think it would be. It allows you to be able to kind of customize this. You could change the color of the font. You can change the, the overall layout, whether or not to include your email, your fax, so on and so forth. So if you feel that's necessary, you can go ahead and update that payment receipt as well. Also in 2021, in QuickBooks Desktop, they have created customer groups to allow you to manage customers more effectively. And we actually already looked a little bit at customer groups when I was showing you some earlier functionality, but it allows you to kind of categorize customers with similar characteristics into distinct groups. So by region, by type of business, or as I showed you a minute ago with respect to the reminders, businesses that, for example, have certain characteristics like an open balance, that's could be put into that group. And then you can kind of manage all those people as a group rather than individually. So what can you do this for? Again, payment reminders, only send a reminder to people with an open balance. No need to bother people who paid you in full. Mailing lists. Maybe you want to, for example, send mailing lists out to your manufacturing clients, or you want to send them out to your vendors, or you want to send them out to clients in California or Massachusetts. You can use those customer groups to be able to categorize those customers and then be able to kind of manage them together. So you'll find the customer groups are kind of spread throughout the application itself. We were using it over here under our payment reminders, and you can access this payment reminders customer groups. This would be where you would go ahead and create those different groups. So let's say we wanted to create a group for customers in California. Okay, we give it a description. Okay, this would be where we would go look and we would find something. Customer type, maybe. Okay, this sample file, so we don't have a lot of options. State. State equals, and then we would go ahead and we would choose, like in this case, California. And so this would now bring up, here are our 145 customers in the state of California, as an example. All right, now a new feature for Enterprise, QBE, QuickBooks Enterprise, is data level permissions. And this is improved end user security options to create customized roles. Now, with QuickBooks Enterprise, a big reason why people choose this compared to its Premier or Pro counterpart is the fact with permissions, they can be very granular inside of the application, meaning with Premier and Pro and QuickBooks Online for that matter, I mean, you can give access, let's say, to AR and AP, you can give access to like reporting, but you can't be very granular in the sense of like, hey, Steve should be able to create a transaction, but not necessarily edit or delete it. With Enterprise, you do get that level of permission, okay? Now we've got data level permissions that can allow administrators to create customized roles in QuickBooks Enterprise that limit access to specific customers or vendors. So with roles in place, you could restrict a user's access to just customers assigned to that user. So you don't have to, for example, give access to all customers. You can say, Steve works with these customers on the West Coast in California, but he doesn't necessarily need to see, edit, modify, update, delete customers in the Midwest, the South, or the East. Likewise with vendors. So if you, for example, have AP clerks and you have certain clerks that are working with specific types of vendors, maybe certain people are working with, your raw material vendors, and other vendors are working with, or other clerks are working with your, general and administrative cost vendors. You can segregate those access so they can access the customers and users as they need. And again, it's a really good kind of internal control to use. That would be specified kind of up here in the company section. And then we would come over here to our users, set up users and roles. Okay. And we would want to go through and customize the different roles and customize the different procedures inside of the Enterprise application. And we can also customize and create additional roles. Now, role-based security, I'll talk about this a little bit later on. What's nice about this is that it's a lot more reliable of a way of assigning permissions to people versus then kind of like carte blanche or ad hoc, where you either give permissions to everybody or you, kind of give permissions to people kind of as requested. Generally, the best principle with respect to roles and permissions inside of these applications, this is how I do it, and this is how you should do it. What you do is that you take the user's job description. Let me see if I can find an example of this. So you take a job description. Okay, so here's like a generic accounts payable job description, right? And you look at the responsibilities, you look at like what they're supposed to do, process outgoing payments, perform day-to-day transactions, blah, 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 right? And then inside of the actual application, you create the role. So let's say it's for that accounts payable role. Okay. And then you want to go and you want to granularly choose what this person's allowed to do. So for example, in our AP and vendors and payable, they're going to have a lot more access to be able to, for example, create vendors, enter bills, pay bills, so on and so forth. But like they need no access to employees in payroll, very little access to company records. Maybe you give them a little bit of access to customers, like in this case for the standard role here, change items and prices, but maybe they should have general access so they can pick up the phone and answer questions in case you need some backup on customer service. But the general principle of this is that you apply the roles and permissions based off of what that job descriptions are. And that way they have the right permissions based off of what they're hired to do. Centers. Yes. Okay. Employee center, vendor center. Okay. And this is going to be where you would give those specific permissions on what somebody should be able to do. Okay. But it's all handled. And then you apply the role and the role that you've just created to the appropriate user. So you define the permissions independent of the person. You create the role and then you put that user into that specific role. Okay. So that's something new inside of Enterprise that you should consider. Okay. All right, so receipt management, beginning with QuickBooks Desktop 2021. Okay, you can now use a mobile app or your computer to upload receipts to QuickBooks. Now, this is something that's been in QuickBooks Online forever, but now you can do it in Desktop as well. You can upload the receipt. QuickBooks will then will extract the relevant details from that transaction and then attempt to match it for you. Okay. So where you're going to go ahead and access this is going to be from the vendor menu and then receipt management. Okay, so vendor receipt management listed here. And you are going to set this up. And this is a sample file, so I will not be able to proceed past this. And this is really kind of bringing in some of the Intuit online services into your file. And this is part of why now some of this is subscription based, because now you're getting some of these, kind of online features that are being brought into the desktop application. And so from here, you would choose the Intuit account for the particular company file, and then you can upload receipts from your computer. You can drag and drop receipts directly into the application, or where you're probably going to end up using it more than often than not is going to be on your mobile device, where you can then snap pictures and then it'll come back over to the QuickBooks Desktop. Okay, so pretty cool in terms of kind of being able to use this. Now, in terms of the online version, this has been in the application for a while. Okay, and if we come on over here to new, and we come over here and we go ahead and either select expense or bill or check. One of the things that we can do with this, it doesn't necessarily do the automatic recognition of this, is that you've got the attachments section. This is how I leverage this. If I were creating, for example, like a bill here, I can attach maybe a copy of the invoice directly to this expense and it'll stay within the system itself. Okay, so I will leverage that feature as well. Okay, and I will attach stuff directly to those transactions, and that upload capability is not only just on bills, but it's on checks. And where I actually leverage it a lot is on invoices, a fair amount as well, especially if I'm invoicing something for like reimbursement. I want to include the original receipts related to that. I'll attach them here. And when you do attach something, let me just go ahead and drop something in here so you could see it. Okay. So it'll upload. You get this option here to attach by email. And so if you choose the option to send and save and send, let me just go ahead and select the customer here. Okay, save and send on this. When this email actually goes out from Intuit, it will actually include that attachment, which is a great way of kind of keeping track of that. So we'll go ahead and save this invoice, and let me exit out of this. I'm going to show you one other thing as it relates to receipts as well. I will also point out, if you come up here to the gear, and from the gear under lists, attachments, You can also see all of the attachments inside of this file. So anything you've attached to QBO, in this case, I just uploaded a simple Word file. This is how you can go in and you can then see those different attachments and you can search for them. You can use it. I mean, QBO as a way of kind of like an e-filing cabinet as well. So like if you wanted to kind of keep track of different things, this is how you do it. And so for myself, I mean, I tend to upload a lot to QBO just to keep track of stuff because I know it's going to be better than being in a Google Drive or a Dropbox. It'll actually keep track of those things for me. Okay. Now over here, you've got under banking receipts. Okay. This is going to be where you can upload receipts and then match them against the actual transactions themselves. And so you can upload from Google. You can also upload them directly from your computer. I'll show you that here in a minute. You can also set this up as a forwarding email. And this is actually a relatively new feature. We could set this up, and then what would end up happening here is that we could forward emails, in this case to Crates Landscaping at QBODocs.com. And then what that will end up doing is it will add those transactions that we forward, those emails. So think of like, Delta, Hilton, Amazon, and you want to pair those up to those different transactions. You can actually just email them directly into QuickBooks and it will get popped up in here, and then you can match them to the transactions as they're coming in. You can also upload these transactions or upload these receipts as well. So let me just go ahead and grab this one. Okay. It's going to go ahead and upload this, and it will attempt to do the extraction, feature extraction, and will then make that available through other aspects of the system. So I just uploaded a really simple report here. Okay, it's going to do what's called OCR, optical character recognition, and then you can match that receipt against a particular banking transaction in the actual system itself. So available in both. Mobile app too. So if you want to, kind of take some pictures, of receipts as you're going along, you can go ahead and do it that way. Now, personally, I've always used a third-party service. I used Bill.com forever to kind of manage a lot of this. And more recently, as I mentioned, I've moved to Corpay. I'll point out, for example, with receipts, there's no sort of like, kind of workflow associated with this. There's no like approval process. So, it's useful, for example, for like kind of having the backup, which is useful for things like a not sales tax audit, but like here in the state of California, occasionally you'll get an audit by the EDD or the Franchise Tax Board for like employee compensation, and you need to show and have backup to your expenses, that they were actually qualified expenses and not just non-employee compensation. You can keep those expense receipts in here. So it's a great way for that, but it doesn't really kind of give you like the approval workflow where you can like approve a transaction and, kind of automatically apply certain characteristics to it or actions to it based off of those characteristics. But it's in here. And so if you wanted to, you can use this as a way of kind of keeping track of those receipts and uploading it directly to QuickBooks. Alrighty, next thing here, you can automatically add purchase order numbers to invoicing emails inside of QBD. Okay, so what I mean by this is that when you send a email out, so you can customize the template for those emails to other parties to include other stuff. So for example, let's say you want to ensure that customers' purchase orders appear in the subject line of the invoices that you email to them. Well, what you can do now is you can edit the template associated with this and then include, for example, that PO number. So to do so, it's pretty simple. What we're going to do is we're going to edit our company preferences. So we're going to come up here to the edit preferences, and we're going to go ahead and select under the send forms section. Okay. And from that send form section, we'll come over here to our company preferences, and then we can go ahead and we can customize the different templates that we want to use. Okay. And so then we can also change the default information associated with for that template. So for example, if we wanted to include PO numbers, we could edit the subject line and then choose the insert field section and then choose to insert additional information. Okay. So let's go ahead and edit our basic template here. Okay. And you'll see that there are certain placeholders. So you'll see invoice num as an example. Well, when it sees, in this case, those are carrots, so when it, or not a caret, those are inequality signs basically. So when it sees, that number, it will substitute with the appropriate number for your invoice. Okay. So we can come on over here. We could say PO number, and then we can come down here to insert. Okay. And there's a lot more options now than there used to be in priors. And so we can, for example, insert the name, first and last first, Mr. Mrs., company name, due date. And then now we can also, for example, include the customer PO number. And so we can go ahead and choose that. And if there was a PO number, it would go ahead and get listed as well. Okay. And once you save your edits and modifications to this, this will automatically apply to all future emails that use that template. Nothing really kind of else for you to have to do. All right. So another thing you can do while we're on this subject of email is that you can actually combine multiple emails into a single email. So if you have multiple attachments, instead of having to send 5 emails, with 5 different invoices, you can combine them with 1 email and 5 attachments. So, with this, it's really going to help reduce, the number of emails that you're sending to an individual, and hopefully get better traction and better, insight and better kind of visibility from the customer. Okay, so this feature is called the combine emails, and allows you to select the different notifications that are going to be sent to a customer and then ultimately combine them into a single notification. Now, to take advantage of this feature, you have to use the option that says email later when creating a document. So like if you are, for example, creating an invoice, okay, and let's come on over here to Christy. Okay, and we were to, for example, go ahead and email this directly to her. Okay. And again, it's not going to let me do this because it's a sample file here. That's not it. What we want to actually end up doing here is ensuring that we're choosing this option that says email later. And so when we do this is we mark this as later, and then we can group them together inside of one single communication. So we'll go ahead and save and close. And then what we're going to want to do is, once we've kind of, let's say, done our billing, our invoicing for the particular period, we're going to send them all out at once, right? That's one of the nice things you can do, is just kind of combine them all together and then send everything out all at once. So everybody gets their invoices, or vendors get notification, or employees get notification all at the same time. And it's not just kind of a drip. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the file menu, and from the file menu, we're going to go ahead and choose the option that says send forms. Okay. And from this send forms option, you're going to go ahead and select the option that says combine forms to a recipient into one email. Okay. This guy right down here. Okay. So from this particular option, if there are multiple notifications that need to be sent, it will now group them together. So over here, and I'm going to explain a nuance of this here in a moment, you could see that we've got several notifications for Christy all grouped into one. Now, one of the things I do want you to notice about this, notice that Christy here appears here, and it says Christy family room, and then up top we have Christy Abercrombie as a statement, right? Okay. This is going to respect the jobs that you've set up. So like you could, for example, have a parent, and then you could have sub jobs associated with that parent. It's going to group based off of whatever entity you've selected. So it's not always going to, for example, sum up to the parent unless you've chosen that option, build a parent. If it's, for example, bill by project, bill by location, bill by sub job, it's going to respect this as well. Okay, so in this particular case, this is a job of Christy. So these are going to get sent together, but this up here, this statement, that's the Christy herself. And so again, kind of a small nuance, but it's important for you to know that, so you know that expected functionality. But in Christy's case, okay, in Christy's case, unfortunately, it's not showing us the name of that person, which is unfortunate. It's just showing us the job. We go from sending 4 emails down to 2. So she gets one for related to that specific family room, and then she'll get another one that's related just to her kind of overall. Okay. And then you can customize the email. In this particular case, you can write out what you want. If we come down here, for example, to this family room, notice on the attachments, you don't see you see all three attachments. They're going to come as separate attachments to each other. It's not going to be, one kind of continuous PDF. It'll be invoice 1, invoice 2, statement, sales order, whatever is supposed to be there. Okay, and then once you're here, you can mark off what you want. So if you only want to send 1 and 2, you can send 2 at a time. Optionally, you can hit this little checkbox up top here, and it will send all of them, everything that you've got going on. It'll send it all at once. All right, next thing to talk about here, company file search. This lets you quickly find and open a company file on your computer or network, and you can then more easily find the data that you're looking for, that you are looking to locate. Okay, so let's go ahead and close Castle Rock here. And this may or may not open up for us because, again, I'm on a demo. Yeah, I don't think I can actually show this, unfortunately. Let me go ahead and bring up what that screen looks like. I'll just show you in the book. Okay, and what this actually does look like here is that when you're in the company overview screen, there is an option that will allow you basically to click this thing that says find a company file, and then you could search your local computers, you can search your removable, you can search the network, and you can just basically type out like something about that, like like that file name or something, and it'll attempt to kind of locate that file for you. And this is really kind of helpful, again, if you have multiple clients, multiple QuickBooks files that you've got operating and you're not sure which one is listed. And it's just basically a simpler, faster way to be able to locate, the QuickBooks working files on your actual computer. But it'll come up on that standard open screen, and from that standard open screen, you can just search across the different, let's call it the different sources on your computer. Okay, something else that they've added here with respect to QuickBooks Desktop is that they've added a easier and more straightforward process for resetting the administrative passwords to these files. And a big reason is because the QuickBooks licensing and the administrator are now tied together. They know who everybody is. So you can't really have like rogue kind of people out there just, operating QuickBooks. Everybody has to have an active license to be able to operate the application. And so because of this, certain administrative features like resetting passwords are much easier than they used to be. Okay. And that particular screen is like when you go to, let me close this file. I won't be able to show this because this is a sample file that I have open, but it's in this screen right here. Okay. It's this process. I forgot my password. Okay. And then now what you can end up doing here, again, this is a sample file, so I can't really ultimately show you this, but you can actually reset it by email, which is pretty nifty because previously you'd have to go to Intuit and they had this tool, they had to verify who you were. And I mean, it was a whole process. Now, again, because this is tied to actual accounts, you can just go ahead and reset these passwords through email. Very similar to how you would reset, your Google password or your Facebook password. And you can just go through this and reset it. I will point out, though, you need to be running the latest file. So if your QuickBooks file is still from like 2020, or older, you need to upgrade it to that file up and get it running inside of QuickBooks Desktop 2021 or later to be able to use this. Okay, other small improvements. They've made some enhanceability. They've enhanced some of the accessibility of the QuickBooks application. This is going to be helpful for anybody with visual disabilities. Specifically, the bills, invoice, and check write screens are enhanced to provide better use for people with visibility issues. I honestly couldn't tell you how it's different or what it's doing different, but I will point out that is one of the enhancements that they have made in the current version. They've made some improvements with respect to reporting, and specifically, they've added the ability to be able to collapse columns. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you a report. So we'll come on over here and let's choose a profit loss standard. And we're up top here under our show columns. Let's go ahead and show columns by customer job. Okay. And what they added here up top, you'll see these little minus icons. What this allows you to do is to collapse columns as needed. Okay. And so, like, you might have several jobs as we do here for our Castle Rock construction, and this allows us to be able to collapse those together and be able to group them. Okay, so maybe let's filter down. Yeah, I'm going to show this a little bit later. But just realize now that you can be able to collapse this. So if you happen to have like years worth of, you've got something that where it's been grouped, you can be able to collapse those together. Okay, so you might find this by customers and job is usually the one that I've seen this being used the most. So I can look at it by individual customers in those locations, or I can collapse it and see them all. I can see them all together. Okay, with QuickBooks 2020, they improved the help functionality. Okay, so if you are in QuickBooks, okay, and you hit F1, they've got enhanced what they call their smart help functionality. This is cooked up to the internet, and it is essentially leveraging a lot of the QuickBooks knowledge base, which is on the Intuit website, where you can ask questions and you can look up questions. You can also contact help and more. And it allows you to basically get connected to customer service or the ability to kind of search for specific answers faster. It's not the traditional help options that we've seen with traditional documentation inside these applications like before. So over here, you know, we could type in something like inventory adjustment. Okay, and it's going to attempt to try to figure out what we're looking for and then connect us with an answer for what we want. So usually these are user supply questions. You'll see here who asked this specific question. And if you don't find the question that you're looking for, you can click the contact us. Okay. And this is going to be where you can chat or you can request a call back. Okay, looks like pretty reasonable response times, at least this morning, although I'm sure at 12:31 and 4:15 and, 10:15, I'm sure the response time would take a lot longer. But this is how you can go ahead and you can ask questions. All right, a couple new features exclusive to QuickBooks Enterprise. Okay, so QuickBooks Enterprise, as I've shown you here, has everything that Premier has, with some additional some additional modifications and some additional enhancements. And there's also a couple of things, as I mentioned, the Enterprise version has more inventory functionality than you're going to see in the Premier and Pro version. And they've added 3 new features to help with inventory. The Express Pick Pack, the landed cost, and then the alternative vendor. So the Express Pick Pack feature allows organizations to combine picker and packer roles when working through the order fulfillment process, allowing team members to complete picking and packing in a single workflow. This is useful for obviously smaller organizations wherein you've got people who are both picking and packing. This is not be for someone like Amazon, but if you've got a small fulfillment center, small order center, this is going to be a useful tool for you because you can essentially kind of handle all of that in one place. Okay. So what we would do to access this, under the customers section, we would choose the sales order fulfillment worksheet, this guy right here. And it would be part of the process of actually kind of setting this up. And you would go ahead and from this particular dashboard, pick the sales orders that you want to pick and pack in one process. And then there's an option once you've selected this, okay, and you've kind of gone through this down here. This is where you can go get your pick list, get your pack list, and also print your sales order all at the same time. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do the print. Preview. Here's your pick list. And if we go to the next page, it's supposed to go to the next page, which would be the pack list and then ultimately the sales order. But you can do all of that now in one operation. Okay. Another thing that they've added here is the landed cost. With this particular feature, it allows us to kind of record all the other ancillary costs associated with acquiring inventory making it ready for sale in one transaction. So, the landed cost of the inventory is, going to include things like transportation or anything that we needed to go do to get the product fit and to get those into the basis of that particular cost. And so before this particular feature, what organizations would end up having to do is it was a series of manual different processes. And often you'd have a couple of, like, let's say, separate worksheets. And from those separate worksheets, you would calculate what the actual cost would be. And then what most people would end up doing is coming into your inventory. Okay. And then they would put this cost in this particular way. And they would record it here, But now what you can do is you can do that landed inventory cost. And you just need to enable this. This is going to be under your advanced inventory settings. Okay. So we'll come on over here to our edit menu, preferences, items in inventory. From items in inventory, under our company preferences, under our advanced inventory settings, this is going to be where we can have and add the landed cost. Okay. And so from this landed class, this is going to be where we can go ahead and set up all those necessary accounts, how the account should function. And once that's set up, when we calculate our inventory costs, it will give us the option to include that landed cost as well. Okay. You can now also specify what are called alternative vendors. And with alternative vendors, what this gives us the ability to be able to do is to specify, a primary vendor and then an alternative vendor for an appropriate piece. So if we can purchase something from one vendor or a different vendor, a non-preferred vendor, we can go ahead and do so inside of QuickBooks. Okay, so what we're going to end up doing here to access this, we're going to come over here to our vendors, and then we're going to go ahead, items and lists, items list. Okay, and then from here, we're going to go ahead and find an inventory item. So maybe it's these cabinet pulls. And then from here, we can go ahead and choose the option that would say edit vendors or manage vendors. Come over to your item, right click, and we're going to go ahead and choose edit item. And then it's going to be under here, and it's going to be this alternative vendor in manage. And this is going to be where you can go ahead and you can see for this particular vendor, in this case, Patent Hardware Supplies is our preferred vendor. And then if we wanted to, we can specify alternative vendors, as many as we need. And these are just the vendors from our vendor sender. So, I mean, you could, maybe your primary vendor is a local company, but a backup is you just go to Amazon and try to buy whatever you can get. Okay. So when I go to, for example, create a PO to go buy these things. Okay. And when we go to actually go purchase this, we can then choose we could then go and choose who we want to go buy it from. Okay. So let me see if I can get this up and running. Cabinet pulls, right? Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and add one more cabinet pulls. Okay. There's a report in here that you can do where you can compare these two vendors and figure out like which one, yeah, right here. Oh, hold on. We need to. Yeah. Okay. We can click this little guy right here. And then this is where we can compare our preferred versus our alternative vendors and who might be the better option. Okay. But obviously requires you to maintain all this data too. Before we continue on to the next chapter here, I want to spend a few minutes and just highlight a couple of the newer features that have been added for QBO as well, and so give you a sense of what some of those features and functions can do for you. What you're looking at here is the QBOA dashboard. And with the QBOA dashboard, it looks very similar to the standard version of QuickBooks Online, but with additional capabilities added for the professional practitioner. And most notably, it's this section over here called Your Practice, where you can actually see some of the firm specific features. Now, you can use QBOA even if you don't have clients that are using QBO. You can actually just use this as a method and manner of, like, for example, just tracking information about your clients. I wouldn't dare go as far as to say it's like a firm management solution, but if you're a really small practitioner, maybe you're just doing taxes or bookkeeping on the side, and you just need a way of basically being able to track information about your clients, you can do so right inside of here 100% for free. And one of the features they've added is the notes feature of QBO. And with the notes features here, this allows you to be able to keep notes and to kind of use it as a quasi CRM, customer relationship management tool, where you can kind of keep information about the client and store that data. And with QBOA, I'll point out again, it's also a team level tool. So you could use this and share this with partners or staff, so they can access this information as well. And from here, the notes or the documents that you upload can also be moved with that, stay with that customer as well and share with other members of your team. So I could add a note over here, like client is with Steve as partner. Okay. And I can just record that note here. And I can also make a note that's private or made available to the whole team. And it, kind of, again, creates a whole history of that particular client. And we can click over here to documents. We can also upload documents related to this client too. So if we, for example, have maybe an engagement letter, we can use this as a document system internally for being able to store documents related to our client in one central repository. Okay. So that is one of those cool things that have been added there. And beyond this, as long as we're on the QBOA section and kind of the firm administration side of this, a couple other things that have been added, some of which are new and some of which have been here for a minute. On the Teams side, this is going to be where you would go and you would set up other users. So if you were to go and set up other people inside your firm, like other folks. So let's say we're going to go ahead and set up Johnny Demo here. Okay. You're going to go ahead and specify their name and their email. And then in the next screen, you've got three screens. You've got their basic user profile, their firm administration profile, and then the client level access that they're supposed to have. And so from here, we can specify at the firm level, this is what rights and controls they should have to manage either clients, projects, and engagements, and then also the firm's books. Not very granular for the most part. You can either basically say they should have access to set up new users and new clients or none, or they can just view those existing clients. When it comes to your books and records, you can limit access to AR and you can limit access to AP. That's it. So you could say basically they have no access to books or some access to books, and that's it. And then likewise, whether or not they should be able to manage clients. When it comes to giving access to your team in QBOA to access client books and records, it's important to note they always have full administrative privileges to every client you give access to. So there's no way to basically say for this external user firm to only be able, like that user of the firm, to only access like the AP or the AR side of the client. They always have full access. Okay, so that is the team level. Thank you so much for attending our presentation and podcast for today. As a reminder, you can check out cpetoday.com for all your continuing education needs. We have courses on every topic you can think of, from accounting to audit to ethics and regulation and more. Everything you need to know to stay relevant, current, and up to date with the profession. Again, check out cpetoday.com. If you're a new watcher or listener to the CPE Today podcast, again, we offer you a free course and a free credit for you to try our services. Pick the podcast of your choosing and use coupon code ONEFREEPODCAST at checkout to make that purchase free. If you enjoyed our presentation, please consider connecting with us on social media and let us know what you think. You can find us just about everywhere at CPE Today, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. And please consider subscribing to us wherever you happen to receive your content. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and others. We'd love for you to leave a review and let us know what you think. It helps new listeners and watchers find our course and content. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for being in the office, and we look forward to seeing you back here soon. Take care.